Somewhere in southern France, a narrow crack in a limestone cliff leads down into total darkness. Follow it far enough, crawling on your stomach through passages barely wide enough for your shoulders, and after nearly a kilometer, you reach a chamber no sunlight has ever touched. And on the walls of that chamber, someone painted a horse. Not near the entrance, not somewhere convenient, nearly a kilometer inside the earth, past crawl spaces so tight that modern researchers sometimes have to remove their equipment just to fit through. Why would anyone do that? Why would a human being, 17,000 years ago, crawl through absolute blackness, carrying fire, to paint something no one but them would likely ever see? Here is the strange fact first. Some of the oldest and most detailed cave art on Earth isn't near cave mouths, where light and air and daily life would naturally draw people in. It's deep, sometimes over a kilometer from any entrance, through passages so narrow a person has to exhale to squeeze through. The famous painted chamber at Lascaux, discovered in 1940, sits roughly 200 meters inside its cave system. The paintings at Chauvet, dated to around 36,000 years ago by researcher Jean Clottes and his team, lie even deeper in total blackness, far past any trace of daylight. And Rouffignac, in the Dordogne region of France, its most famous mammoth engravings are located nearly a kilometer and a half from the entrance. A kilometer and a half, in the dark, on foot, or on hands and knees. Is that even survivable? Doing that repeatedly? With only fire for light? Barely. And that's exactly what makes this so strange. To make this journey, ancient humans needed light that would last. Archaeologists have found the physical evidence scattered across cave floors. Charred wood, animal fat residue, and hollowed-out stones that once held burning tallow like crude oil lamps. A 2016 study led by researcher Sophie Verheyden analyzed burnt wood fragments in Bruniquel Cave in France and dated deliberate stone ring structures inside it to roughly 176,000 years ago, built by Neanderthals, deep underground, using fire, long before modern humans even arrived in the region. That number should stop you for a second. 176,000 years ago, before Homo sapiens had even reached Europe. Whoever built those rings did it entirely by firelight, hundreds of meters from the surface, for reasons we still don't fully understand. Let's sit with that discovery a little longer, because it quietly rewrites part of the human story. For a long time, deep cave use was considered a hallmark of behavioral modernity, something unique to Homo sapiens, evidence of symbolic thought that supposedly set us apart from other early human species. The Bruniquel rings challenged that assumption directly. Neanderthals, working in near or total darkness, hauled dozens of broken stalagmites, some weighing several kilograms each, arranged them into two deliberate ring structures, and lit fires within them. This wasn't an accident of nature. It required planning, teamwork, and a reason to be there that had nothing to do with hunting or shelter. We still don't know exactly why they did it, but we know they went, on purpose, into a place where going served no obvious survival function at all. So what were they doing down there? What could possibly be worth the risk, the effort, the fire that had to be carried, refueled, and kept from dying in air that grows staler the deeper you go? One theory points to something deeply human: ritual and initiation. Anthropologist David Lewis Williams has argued that deep cave spaces may have functioned as thresholds, physical spaces separating the ordinary world from something considered sacred or spiritual. Crawling through darkness, disoriented, cut off from daylight and open sky, may have induced altered states of consciousness. Some researchers have pointed to the physical effects of prolonged darkness and carbon dioxide buildup in poorly ventilated chambers, both of which are known to affect perception. In other words, the difficulty of the journey might have been the entire point, not an obstacle to overcome. A ritual passage designed to change the state of mind of whoever made it. Is a difficult, disorienting journey a doorway rather than a barrier? To the people who made this trip on purpose, it might have been exactly that. There's another clue buried in the art itself. Many deep cave paintings are placed on natural rock formations that already resemble the animal being painted. A bulge that becomes a shoulder, a crack that becomes a horn. Artists weren't just drawing on blank walls. They were finding animals already hidden in the stone and finishing what the cave had started. That single detail changes how we should think about this. These weren't casual doodles made to pass the time. They required scouting, planning, and an intimate, repeated familiarity with a cave system many of us today would find genuinely terrifying to enter once. And they required fire, a lot of it, and reliably. Researchers examining torch marks on cave walls at Chauvet found charcoal white patterns from torches being tapped against stone to keep them burning over and over across the entire length of the painted galleries. Whoever made this journey wasn't lighting one torch and rushing through. They were managing fuel, timing, and light across what might have been hours underground, in air with limited oxygen, at real physical risk. A 2021 study analyzing footprints preserved in the mud floor of Chauvet suggested that groups, not lone individuals, made these journeys, based on differing footprint sizes found together deep in the cave. That detail matters more than it might seem at first. This wasn't one obsessive artist working alone. It looks like a shared, coordinated act, multiple people deliberately choosing to go into the dark together. There's a stranger clue still, one that has nothing to do with the images themselves. In the 1980s, researcher Igor Reznikov began studying the acoustic properties of decorated cave chambers in France and found something researchers hadn't expected. The most densely painted chambers often had the strongest natural echo and resonance, far more than the plain, undecorated passages connecting them. In some caves, the correlation was striking enough that Reznikov claimed he could locate painted panels in total darkness simply by humming and listening for where the sound changed. The paintings, in other words, tended to cluster exactly where the cave itself sounded most alive. That's not something you'd expect from a purely practical use of space. It suggests the sound of these chambers mattered as much as the sight of them, that whatever happened in these rooms may have involved voice, chanting, or music, layered on top of the visual art, deep underground, far from anyone who wasn't already part of the journey. Why does that detail change everything? Because a shared ritual, undertaken as a group, tends to serve the group, not just the individual who happened to be holding the torch. So maybe the paintings themselves were never really the goal. Maybe the destination mattered less than getting there. The crawling, the narrow gaps, the fire held carefully in the dark, the moment of arrival in a chamber that few living humans would ever see. Consider what that means about who these people were. We often imagine our ancient ancestors as purely practical, focused entirely on survival, hunting, and shelter. Nothing wasted, nothing without an obvious use, but dragging fuel and pigment more than a kilometer through blackness, at real physical risk. To paint an image intended for almost no one is not a practical act. It is something closer to devotion. Ochre pigments found at some sites had to be sourced from locations many kilometers from the cave itself, ground down, mixed with binders like animal fat or plant sap, and carried in, alongside fire, alongside food, alongside whatever courage the journey required. That is an enormous amount of deliberate effort for an image with, as far as we can tell, no practical function whatsoever. Unless the function wasn't practical at all. Unless it was something closer to what humans still do today. Build cathedrals no one needs for shelter. Carve messages meant for people not yet born. Leave marks meant to outlast the person who made them. Modern researchers have gone to remarkable lengths just to confirm how old some of this art actually is, without damaging it in the process. Uranium-thorium dating, a technique that measures the slow radioactive decay of tiny mineral deposits that form naturally over calcite crusts on cave walls, has let scientists date paintings without scraping away a single flake of pigment. In 2018, a team led by researcher Dirk Hoffman used this method on cave art in Spain and produced dates suggesting some markings were made by Neanderthals, not modern humans at all, tens of thousands of years before Homo sapiens is thought to have arrived in the region. If that dating holds up under continued scrutiny, it means the impulse to go into darkness and leave something behind isn't uniquely ours. It may belong to more than one species of human that has ever existed. Is that so different from what you do when you leave something behind for people you'll never meet? The paintings at Chauvet are over 36,000 years old. The artists who made them have been gone for longer than most of human history has existed in any recorded form. And yet their work is still down there, in the dark, exactly where they left it. No one saw most of these paintings again for tens of thousands of years. Not because they were hidden by accident, but because reaching them was always meant to be difficult. That difficulty may be the reason so much of it has survived at all. Caves like Lascaux, once open to the public in the mid-20th century, began deteriorating almost immediately, human breath alone introducing enough moisture and carbon dioxide to encourage mold growth on pigments that had survived undisturbed for over 15,000 years. The cave was closed to the public in 1963, just 2 decades after its rediscovery, and a full replica had to be built nearby so visitors could see something close to the original without destroying what remained of it. The very inaccessibility that once made these paintings feel almost pointless to create is very possibly the reason they still exist for us to study today. Darkness didn't just hide this art. In a strange way, it preserved it. Maybe that's the actual reframe hiding in all of this.